viewpoint about ensuring everybody has an opportunity to be heard and that the board can complete its work responsibly. Now we'd like to start, and I'm going to turn it over to our town manager, Brandon.
Hey, good evening, everyone. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. I think this is, this may be the first meeting where 3 towns have gotten together like this. I was talking to Bob a couple of days ago, and I think it might be a good idea if we do this more often. We share, we're contiguous towns and we have similar issues. So I just wanted to thank everyone for being here tonight. The purpose of this meeting is discussion. We do not anticipate any voting to occur tonight. It's really informational only, and to gather input from everyone on the non-Scotland Regional Police Department proposal. Here tonight with us is Trevor Whipple. Mr. Whipple is a law enforcement consultant for the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. Thank you for raising your hand. Mr. Whipple has just shy of 20 years of experience as a police chief in Vermont and was involved in the Chittenden County Public Safety Authority. Thank you very much for being here with us tonight. The purpose of this meeting is to explore the possibility of a regional police department. So let's start by doing introductions. Again, I'm the town manager of Weathersfield.
I'm Kelly O'Brien, chair.
I'm Rick Anderson, vice chair.
Nate McNaughton, board member.
Billy Gutierrez, Cavendish.
Rick Chambers, town manager, Cavendish.
Shannon Devereux, select board member, Cavendish.
David Norton, select board member, Cavendish.
Bruce Kendall, resident in Weathersfield.
Tony Kendall, resident of Weathersfield.
Tom Leach, resident of Weathersfield.
Suzanne Terrell, administration.
Todd White, chief deputy, action sheriff, Weathersfield County Sheriff.
Rick Bates, Weathersfield resident.
Bob Allen, chair of the Rating Select Board.
Brandon said Trevor Whipple with one of the biggest cities in town. Neil Coffin, and for Cavendish and Weathersfield, Baltimore, and Cavendish.
Jeff Slade, Weathersfield resident.
Lisa Slade, Weathersfield resident. That's the round Weathersfield resident.
Lisa Van Velder, studio, Weathersfield resident.
Sophia Lostick, Pipeline, Weathersfield resident.
Stephen Goffin, resident of Weathersfield.
Joseph Boudlatt, Weathersfield resident. Greg Martell, Weathersfield resident.
Andy Martell, resident.
John Whalen, Weathersfield resident.
Christopher Shiraz, Weathersfield resident.
Christina Shiraz, Weathersfield resident.
Robert Woolman, Cavendish resident.
DeForest Burks, member of Weathersfield Select Board.
Mikey Todd, Weathersfield Select.
Thank you very much, everyone, for introducing themselves. Online, it looks like we also have Michael Ripley. Would you like to introduce yourself, sir? We have RSP, Marco Caulfield. Icon 4, Darlene Johnson, Sarah Stowell, Darius iPad, David, Sandra Russo, Catherine, Susan Brown, Stacy Worcester, Mitch, Jen Lee, Stacy D, Amy and Seth Perry, Patrick Buchanan, Melissa RJ, Donahue, Parents iPad, Chad, Melissa, iPhone, HB, Joel Hulo, and iPad 2. We also have Amy Beth Main, Jake Chase, Rita, and Mark Gordon. So those are everyone that's present here with us tonight. The recording secretary asked that I announce everyone's names out loud because she'll be doing the meeting minutes from the video recording. I'm just currently upstairs with the Conservation Commission. So let's go ahead and move on. Contents of this meeting. So we'll talk about why we invited Brendan Cavendish here tonight to discuss this topic with us. We'll talk a little bit about tonight's discussion and some more rules for participation. As we began evaluating our next steps, it became clear that small rural towns face similar structural challenges when operating independent police departments, including staffing depth, supervisory capacity, cost control, and long-term capital planning. Rather than rebuild in isolation, we extended an invitation to Reading and Cavendish to explore whether a regional policing model could offer shared staffing and improved coverage consistency, reduced overtime exposure, consolidated administrative and supervisory functions, stronger grant competitiveness, predictable and transparent cost allocation, and greater long-term operational stability. Together, our communities represent approximately 5,000 people. Individually, we are small towns. Collectively, we have the scale to build something stronger and more sustainable. Tonight is about exploring that possibility. Tonight's discussion, we'll talk about the conceptual framework for the Montesquieu Regional Police Department, some service demand data and current coverage levels, a draft FY27 budget framework, possible cost allocation methods, governance and oversight structures, and then a high-level transition timeline. Again, this is an exploratory discussion intended to determine whether continued collaboration makes sense for us. So rules for participation, respectful and civil dialogue, public commented, as the chair said, limited to 2 minutes per speaker. When we open this up to discussion, please direct all comments to the chair. Only one speaker at a time. Stay on the topic. So the topic tonight is the Montesquieu Regional Police Department, and there is nothing else on the agenda that can be legally discussed. No personal attacks. We'll go through the entire presentation, and then discussion will commence. All right. So Montesquieu Regional Police Department. The Montesquieu Regional Police Department is being proposed as a collaborative intermunicipal policing model among the towns of Weathersfield, Reading, and the town of Cavendish. Its purpose is to provide stable, locally governed, fiscally responsible law enforcement services. While ensuring uninterrupted public safety coverage. I'd just like to pause right there for 1 second. Josh, could you introduce yourself? We just did introductions.
Josh,
Thank you, sir. The framework is guided by the following principles: local control with shared governance. Participating towns retain oversight and budgetary authority through a formal intermunicipal agreement. We have something very similar with our transfer station. So we have a transfer station that is shared through a fixed allocation formula with the town of Reading and the town of West Windsor. We can implement a similar cost allocation formula for this agreement based on a couple of different things that we'll talk about tonight. The second is fiscal discipline and transparency. Costs are allocated fairly and predictably.
Could you please do something about your audio?
Oh. Let's see. Is our audio?
It's terrible.
No.
Say it's hard to hear.
Yes, very garbled.
Can you hear me?
Say. We're gonna do our best. I'll speak a little bit louder. Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So fiscal discipline and transparency, costs are allocated fairly and predictably based on objective service demand metrics. Operational sustainability, staffing, supervision, and capital planning are structured for long-term viability, not short-term coverage. Public safety services, there will be no lapse in public safety services during this transition. Flexibility, the structure allows for future refinement and potential inclusion of additional towns. So within the intermunicipal agreement that we'll discuss tonight, there would also be a clause recommended to cover additional towns if they so wish to contract with us. Legal structure. The legal structure of the Montesquieu Regional Police Department would be established through an intermunicipal agreement. It would define the governance and oversight authority, establish a cost allocation methodology, clarify fiscal authority and reporting, and outline addition/withdrawal procedures. So if a town wanted to withdraw from the agreement, there would be procedures for that. And if a town wanted to join in on the agreement, there would be procedures for that as well. Also part of the legal structure would be the budget adoption process, how an annual budget would be adopted. And we'll talk a little bit about that tonight. The IMA would define the appointment and supervision of the chief of police, asset ownership and capital replacement planning, and dispute resolution mechanisms. Each participating select board would be asked to formally approve the agreement if we did decide to move forward. Governance models. I've put in 2 proposed governance models. The first would be a regional police commission. So that would basically consist of 1 or more representatives appointed by each participating town. They would be responsible for policy adoption, budget development, and chief oversight. And then budget recommendations returned to each town for approval. The option that I recommend based on our current situation is lead town administrative model. So we would have 1 designated as a fiscal agent, which would be, I would recommend the town of Weathersfield. And then we would have an advisory committee comprised of representatives from all towns. This is consistent with what we have for the transfer station. It is consistent with what we have in the town of Reading and West Windsor, where we basically have a select board representative that gets appointed by each of the boards to this committee. And what they do is they meet quarterly, they review budgets. We present the budget to the committee, they provide feedback, we may revise the budget, and then it goes to the 3 select boards for discussion and feedback and so forth, and goes through a revision process. Select boards may send it back to the committee to review, and then the committee would make those changes and send it back to the 3 towns collectively for approval. Yeah, sorry about that. The chief reports administratively through the designated host town. The final governance structure would preserve equal representation, fiscal accountability, clear supervisory authority, and then transparency for taxpayers. So we would know exactly how much is spent on every aspect of the annual budget, and there would be monthly financial reporting where a committee would see a quarterly finance report with projections through year end to ensure the budget remains on track and on budget through year end, which is consistent to Weathersfield's financial practices for many years. Our staffing framework, this is a preliminary staffing framework. So recommendation is 1 full-time chief of police, 2 full-time police officers, and 2 part-time police officers. What that provides is 150 hours a week of coverage. It allows supervisory depth and reduced overtime exposure. Our service delivery model. So the Montesquieu Regional Police Department would provide control services, emergency response, traffic enforcement, criminal investigations, community policing and public engagement, mutual aid support. Coverage would be allocated proportionally across towns, informed by historical contracted hours, call volume data, geographic considerations, road mileage, and seasonal fluctuations. Scheduling would be coordinated centrally to ensure redundancy and consistency. All right, so then we have 2 cost allocation methods for review. The first cost allocation would be based on call volume. So that allocation formula would calculate the 3-year average number of police calls for each town. So basically we look at the town of Reading's 23, 24, and 25 police call log data, and then we take an average based on those 3 years, and the same for Weathersfield, the same for Cavendish. And then we would divide each town's average call volume by the total combined call volume of all participating towns to determine that town's percentage of service demand. And then once we have that town's percentage, we would multiply each town's percentage by the total regional police department budget to determine its annual financial allocation. Option 2, which would be the option that I would recommend for the first year, since all of our budgets are already distributed and already sent out for town meeting approval and warned, would be a patrol hour allocation. An allocation formula like this, each town determines how many hours of policing service they would like per year. Then we would add all hours together for each town to determine each town's percent of hours. Then we would multiply the total budget by each town's percent to determine its annual financial allocation.
Can you turn it sideways so you get a bigger picture? I don't know. Yeah, okay.
Samsung S938U, you have, thank you. All right, financial oversight and accountability. Annual budget approval process. So similar to the transfer station committee and our allocation formula with them, the town of Weathersfield would take the lead to develop the budget for the Montesquieu Regional Police Department annually. Along with, and then we would again have that 3-town committee in place to review that proposed budget. It would be reviewed with the town managers of Cavendish and Weathersfield and either a select board representative or the select board chair in the town of Reading. The committee would review, provide feedback, and then would ultimately recommend the budget to the 3 select boards. Each town select board again would review, provide feedback, and approve the budget, or send it back to the committee for additional work. We would typically start these budget discussions sometime in September and October to give it the ability to get to all the select boards and have enough time to discuss it. On the accountability end, we'd have monthly financial reports. So those are your budget to actuals. What is our budget? How much do we spend in period 1, in period 2, in period 3? How much do we spend each quarter? So those are the things that would be distributed to each 3 towns to ensure that each 3 towns have transparency for their residents. We would have segregated police accounts, regular reconciliations, so bank reconciliations, general ledger reconciliations, payroll reconciliations. Every year, the town of Weathersfield gets audited by an independent agency. We have a capital reserve fund for vehicle replacements and quarterly reporting again to member towns. Facilities and equipment department headquarters would be in the town of Weathersfield. We have a secure evidence storage area, a vehicle fleet and communication systems, and we would address future asset ownership in the IMA. Transition framework. There easy. Try to pick a side to go. The transition framework consists of finalizing the intermunicipal agreement, the hiring of a police chief, recruitment and onboarding of officers, establishing policies, which I've talked to Mr. Whipple about, and the select board will see various new policing policies, 7 of which are policies that we need to adopt, and will be discussed at a future meeting. And ensure uninterrupted coverage during that transition if we decide to proceed. Long-term strategic outlook. Excuse me, guys. Stay a little bit longer. The regional model offers structural advantages over standalone municipal departments in small towns, including reduced administrative redundancy, broader supervisory capacity, stronger grant eligibility, enhanced recruitment competitiveness, improved resilience during turnover, and then shared capital planning. This approach is not intended to reduce service, but to build a stable, predictable public safety framework aligned with the size and fiscal realities of our three communities. So let's look at some 2025 police call log data. At Weathersfield, we had 1,373 calls for service. In Cavendish, there were 227 calls for service. And in Reading, 253 calls for service. Collectively, we had 1,853 calls for service. So of those calls for service, Weathersfield made up 74% of that. Cavendish made up 12.25% of this, and Reading 13.65%. The proposal would be to start this on June 1st of 2026. This approach is intended to police each town within its approved policing budget, provide predictability and transparency and cost sharing, align staffing resources with demonstrated service demand, and allow for adjustments over time as call volume and service needs evolve. Transition and timeline. The 120-day notice period that we gave the Windsor County Sheriff's Department through our termination letter provides sufficient time to finalize intermunicipal agreements, establish the legal and administrative structure of the department, hire personnel, prepare policies, procedures, and training requirements, and ensure uninterrupted policing coverage upon contract termination. So here's a more detailed breakdown of our timeline. 2/26/26, initial multi-town meeting to review the concept, governance structure, and next steps. If we decide to move past this, then between 2/27 and 3/6, we would, our town attorney and I would draft an intermunicipal agreement and distribute it to each town's either town manager or select board chair to bring back to their boards, review, and provide feedback on it. On 3/10/26, we're going to advertise a police chief position. Depending on whether the three towns do have interest in moving forward, we would advertise that as the Montescutney Regional Police Chief position, or if we still need some time to discuss the finer details and have discussion in each town within the and each town we're looking to continue to explore this and discuss it within the advertisement for the Weathersfield Police Department chief. I would enter something along the lines of one of the highest priorities would be to continue working with the other towns on a regional police department framework. On 4/3/26, police chief application, that would be the police chief application deadline. Between 4/6 and 4/10 would be the review of police chief applications and determinations on which police chiefs and which applicants to interview. Between 4/13 and 4/17, we would conduct police chief interviews. And that would be a panel interview process. Between 4/20 and 4/23, we would do the final round of interviews. And that final round of interviews would take place with the town managers of Cavendish and Weathersfield, and then the select board chair in the town of Reading. Again, if the three of us decided to continue to work forward on this. On 4/20/4/26, the determination on police chief candidate and extension of job offer. Between 4/27 and 5/1, we would conduct the background check process. And on 5/4, the police chief would take office. Between 5/4 and 5/31, the police chief would advertise and hire officers. And on 6/1/26, coverage would commence. All right, so at this time, I am going to pass around the proposed draft. If the three towns were to work together, FY 27 Honest got a regional police department budget. Yeah. All right. I believe everyone has a copy at this point. So in FY 27, the proposed budget for our three towns was 401,000 in Weathersfield, 40,000 in Reading, $67,221 in the town of Cavendish. So the FY 27 updated budget would be the same, with no difference in the allocation. What this would do is it would provide Weathersfield with 118 hours of service per week, which is 18 more hours than we're currently getting. It would provide Reading with 12 hours per week and Cavendish with 20 hours per week. The way that I did this for the first year is I took the total budget number of $533,221 and I figured out the percent of each town's FY 27 allocation. And then I took those percentages, I multiplied it by the total budget amount. I then took 533,000, I divided it by 52, divided that by 150 hours of service, and that's how I came up with each town's total number of hours of service for FY 27. The sheriff's department is currently $75 per hour. However, it would have increased, at least in Weathersfield, to roughly $77 per hour. And that's based on what we allotted and not what we actually were requested to allocate. This model would reduce the hourly rate from roughly $77 per hour to $68 per hour. Further, it is my understanding that the pay scale at the Sheriff's Department is far below the average police officer rate, according to the Vermont League of Cities and Towns compensation data for all municipalities in the state of Vermont. This budget accounts for fair and competitive pay for police officers and the police chief. This budget allocates $100,000 for the police chief salary, $132,000 for full-time officers. It allows for some overtime expenses, $49,000 for part-time police officers, $9,000 for our Beavers clerk. And then of course you got payroll taxes such as FICA, which is 7.65%. We have the child care contribution tax of $971. Police retirement is category D in the town of Weathersfield, which is 11.85%. So that accounts for total police retirement. Insurance benefits, that's really subject to what the employees opt into when they become employed by the town. So I sort of picked a range of different plans and came up with an estimated number there, but again, that number may go down or it could go up depending on what they elect. Employee only plans are less than a family plan, but then we also have an opt-out in place, which gives 50% of the total plan cost if the employee has coverage. So that number could go in either direction depending on the employee's benefit selection. Uniform expenses, workers' compensation, 11.1%. We're gonna research that a little bit more. I know it had dropped a little bit in previous years, but I wanted to do a worst case scenario budget reality here. Unemployment insurance is 0.54%. You see the deduction there and contracted policing services. Office supplies of $1,500, postage of $500, equipment of $2,500, tuition and training of $3,000, expense reimbursement of $1,000, telephone. That's a cell phone for the police chief. Dues and memberships of $1,000, legal expenses of $500, dispatch services of $25,000, which is currently pending. In the past, we didn't pay for dispatching services with BSP. We're currently in conversations with BSP to determine if we can continue to have those services. We're also in discussion with the town of Hartford, and the town of Springfield to see what they could offer the town for dispatching services. Police insurance is $11,500. Gas and oil, we budgeted a little bit high here based on previous years, but we're entering 15,000. If we did a regional model, there would obviously be additional travel and additional gas being used. So what I took is the way that I developed this $15,000 number is I took what our police department spent in gas and oil in the past, and then I added in the additional hours of patrol for Cavendish and Reading. We came up with $15,000 for gas and oil. And then repairs and maintenance of $7,500. And then at the very bottom is a $16,000 contingency, just in case health insurance goes a little bit over or dispatching services goes a little bit over. That contingency is in place as a safety net just in case. All right, so some more benefits of a regional police structure. Shared staffing across town lines to improve coverage consistency and reduce gaps caused by leave or turnover. Reduced overtime exposure through coordinated scheduling. Consolidation of administrative, supervisory, and compliance functions to reduce duplication. Coordinated capital and equipment planning to avoid unnecessary redundancy and strengthen modernization efforts. Improved competitiveness for grant funding and shared resource opportunities. Greater operational depth, training, and supervisory resilience, strengthening overall public safety stability across the 3 towns. And costs that can be allocated fairly based on call volume, service demand, rather than each town independently bearing full administrative overhead. All right. I will now take questions. Any questions anyone has, they can direct into the chair. But before we do that, Trevor, do you have anything you would like to add in or expand on?
I don't really want to add. I think it's more giving what folks are thinking. If there are questions about structure or vehicle to make this happen.
Okay.
I'm not sure I a lot to add. I mean, there's obviously different ways to do regionalized policing. This is one, it's likely the most expeditious. And there have been other towns that have worked with it, have tried to do this, and they've struggled to get started primarily because of the hard startup costs. And I know when Brandon and I talked, there's some discussion about having access to instantaneous access to equipment so that you don't have to lay out a lot of money to buy freezers, facilities and that type of thing.
Yeah.
Or you did check the fact that we have equipment and so forth, so we were gonna talk about that?
I can. So when we entered into the agreement with the sheriff's department, we sold all of our police cruisers and equipment through a loan with the town of Weathersfield. So there's a loan agreement between the town of Weathersfield and the sheriff's department, and they currently have all of our vehicles and equipment inventory. That is on track to be returned to us by March 15th. So we will not need any additional vehicles or equipment to start up.
There's a question, I just update this.
Hello, it's Melissa Coleman. Yes, I am a occupant of Weathersfield. I'm wondering, I was looking at your timeline for, getting this all on board and noticing that there are, 4 days for the panel and 4 days for and 7 days after the police chief has his background check, he's on duty. And I would think that you wouldn't hire a police chief until his background check was cleared. And I would think that a professional would give at least 2 weeks, and a police chief probably much more than that. So I think that your timeline is a little short, just to make it fit into your plan. Because I don't see a police chief signing on board that's worth his salt from 7 days from your offer and from his clearance for his background report, which is part of the reason that we're here, right? Is that our police chief is in trouble.
So we are covered until 6/30/26. This particular timeline is pretty tight. But
it's very tight.
If the background check process takes longer, like you said, we add a week, or other things take a little bit longer, we do have a 30-day or more contingency.
But then you're expecting the police chief to come on and hire all of his officers. So if you get backed up, we're not going to have coverage, or you're going to be paying the state police, etc., for our coverage.
So yeah, we would definitely, like I had mentioned on Monday, Melissa, we've been in discussions with neighboring towns and also the Vermont State Police, and coverage will not lapse.
What is the response time of the Vermont State Police to Perkinsville on a Friday night at 9 p.m.?
I'm sorry, I'm talking about neighboring towns with VSP covering as well. VSP currently covers, so I'm talking like the town of Springfield and I are in conversations, and then also Vermont State Police.
So Springfield might respond as well. I'm just thinking, just an example of. I'm going to give you a really quick example. This summer, we had somebody escape from somebody who had a warrant, ran from Downers Four Corners on a bicycle through my front yard. I had 7 cruisers here, and including Windsor, Springfield, no VSP at all. Obviously, they couldn't have made it in time. 2 or 3 sheriffs. So especially in my area, I think because of the sheriff's department, we are aware of more crime in my immediate vicinity. And so this proposal of like maybe decreasing response times.
There's no proposal that maybe decreases response times.
Right. In the immediate, while you're getting this on board.
Yeah.
Can I interrupt for a brief second? Cavendish Select Board member. If we're through with the slideshow, it'd be easier to see everybody talking. If you could close the slideshow so that the people, yeah, just much better. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Ripley. Mrs. Slade. So, I don't know how this 2-minute timer works, when you start, I'll let you know. My comments after listening to the presentation is a couple questions and a couple comments. So, first of all, we heard a lot from the Weathersfield town manager. Right out of the box, and I've lived in Weathersfield 61 years. This appears that it's gonna be another Weathersfield Police Department. I'm interested in hearing from Cavendish, town manager, Reading, select board chair, Cavendish, select board people, Cavendish and Reading townspeople. So that's my first statement. And if we wanna go that way, then maybe the proposal should be for a Weathersfield Police Department, and then area towns, even if new towns come on board, could pay $75 an hour for Weathersfield police officers. But since this has been a 3-town thing right now, I'm sure our town manager has had many meetings and conversations with Reading and Cavendish already, so I'd like to hear from those 2 towns tonight. And then this budget, I think we all pay bills in 2026. It's hard to run a household by projecting what costs are gonna be, because costs go up every single day. I think most of this budget is way too low. I don't see, even though it was commented that Weathersfield sold 3 police cruisers to the sheriff's department, we're on schedule to get those back before March 15th. They're still gonna cost money. We don't know what condition they're in right now, and they're not currently in the capital plan that's the one between the town, before the town of Weathersfield voters on Tuesday. I know the last 3 police cruisers have been purchased under the rug through the Weathersfield General Fund. They have not gone out and been an article on a town warrant, so is that gonna continue, maybe we add to 60 or 120,000 more in this proposed time? That's your 2 minutes.
Perfect, I did good, didn't I?
Yeah, I did.
So this budget. I do believe that this budget is accurate. I think it needs to be revised. And if you look at financial records for the past 10 years in the town, which is what we look at. When we make these, obviously nothing's gonna be completely to the set. But it is based on realistic numbers, and these percentages are what they are. FICA doesn't change, retirement isn't gonna change, all those things are already set, fixed. The chief, the full-time officers are based on the average pay according to BLCT, so that's fixed. Insurance benefits could be lower, could be higher, like I was saying. Even based on when gas prices were really high, we were only spending $9,500 in fuel. So adding 5,500 seems to be realistic. And then in addition, there's a $16,000 contingency. Is it okay to pass it over now to the Cavendish town manager?
There's another question on the line.
Okay, we'll take those questions after we.
So I'm Rick Chambers, the Cavendish town manager. And I've had some talks with Brandon on this. I know Weathersfield is in a little different of a scenario because you need a police force, and whether or not Cavendish would sign on to just Weathersfield, I don't know. We haven't had these discussions yet, but I can tell you we're personally very intrigued about the possibility and the benefits for all 3 towns to have a regional police department. I think it could be very beneficial to everybody. We all have to pay for emergency services somehow, somewhere. So the money that we would be spending to be able to spend it on a police force, and we have a little bit more say in regionally for each town, think is a benefit.
Bob?
Yes, Bob Allen, Chair of the Reading Select Board. Brendan called me on February 10th, I believe it was, and floated this proposal by me. At that point in time, I made the comment that it's certainly worth a discussion. As far as Reading goes, that is as much of a commitment as we have made. It's worth the discussion. Certainly, this meeting tonight and the information he has provided has been very interesting, excuse me. The 3 select board members in Reading, through one reason or another, have not been able to set together to even discuss the preliminary information that was given by Brandon, and that's been a lot. We have one on vacation, one that's in a training class tonight, and I'm here. But prior to this, through one reason or another, we haven't gotten together other than a 30-minute conference call on the telephone a week ago tonight. And then the lady left on vacation, so that's where we're sitting right now. We do have a contract with Windsor County through June 30th. I would say, and I'm speaking a little out of turn because I haven't voted this by the other 2 members, I don't see us canceling that contract before the 30th of June. So that's where we're at. We're certainly interested in continuing discussions, but I'm not here to commit that we would transfer to Weathersfield, and I'm not here to say that we would not transfer to Weathersfield. We're just waiting for more information.
And then I just have one more response to Lisa. We would develop it as the Weathersfield Police Department and advertise initially if we couldn't get an MOU together, so that you were correct.
Can you repeat that, please?
If we don't have an agreement in place, then we would develop it as the Weathersfield Police Department initially and advertise it as the Weathersfield Police Chief position initially. And then through the advertisement, we would say, it's still the regional policing model, things are still being discussed. And then if we had an MOU in place before the police chief came into office, it would be the Morgan County Regional Police Department.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yeah, just one thing to what you just said, Brendan. The forming it as the Weathersfield Police Department and then contracting to Cavendish or Reading, other towns, would be the fastest way. Because when you go to form a regional police department, and especially in the way 24 VSA is written, 24 VSA 1931, I believe it is. That would, an interdepartment, like you're saying, would be each town had a police department and then you combine them. The towns that don't have a police department, if Weathersfield had one, it would be easier to contract to the other towns.
Absolutely.
Once you design it as a regional police department, that has to go through legislature. Because you have to define the region. And that can take up to 18 months. So it may be better to think of it as looking at reestablishing the Weathersfield Police Department and then contracting them with other towns.
And that's exactly what we're doing, Leo. I did ask the town attorney today is if we can create the Weathersfield Police Department and then make it DBA as the Montescutney Regional Police Department so that we can have all of our logos be the Montescutney Regional Police Department. I think that it's important that each town has a feeling of ownership of the department. We did something very similar with the Ascutney Fire District number 2. When I first came in as a town manager, I was getting a lot of feedback from residents, getting bills from the Ascutney Fire District, and they thought the fire department was charging them for services through that billing mechanism. So what we did is we we deviated the Escutney Water District and changed all of our logos and everything to the Escutney Water District. I have the question to the town attorney. Let me see if he's actually responded yet. He may have. He has not responded to it yet. So as soon as I have a firm decision on that, I will let it be called the Weathersfield Police Department and DBA it or not.
Have someone online. Yeah, so Nicole Gannon says, does the audit explicitly cover indirect expenses like admin overhead and will provide public breakdowns, pie charts or tables of allocations before approval?
Yes, answer is yes.
And then Sandra Russo has her hand raised. Sandra, did you still have a question?
Yes, I did, but on February 9th, the Weathersfield Select Board minutes show that they signed the offer letter for the purchase of former assets of the Weathersfield Police Department. Could you please explain what that means? What the cost would be?
Of course, there's a little bit of confusion out there. So basically what happened, Sandra, is the town of Weathersfield had about $140,000 worth of vehicles and equipment. The sheriff's department at the time didn't have $140,000 to pay us. So what we did is we gave them a loan. We basically gave them a loan with an amortization schedule for 60 months, and we deducted their loan amount of $2,683 and some change from their total contract amount monthly. And then we took that $2,683 and we transferred it to our police cruiser reserves. So what we're doing is we are receiving our assets back and all of our police equipment and then terminating the loan with the sheriff's department. So it's a break-even situation. Does that make sense?
I'll have to think about it, but thank you. I didn't know if you were going out to purchase a whole bunch of other equipment.
No.
Okay, thank you.
No cost situation in that respect.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So your budget, Jeff Slade, your budget, Brandon, doesn't include replacement of vehicles.
Can you speak up a bit, please?
Your budget does not include any replacement of vehicles. Now, if vehicles are gonna cost you $100,000 and they're gonna last 5 years, you're gonna put $20,000 away each year. So that doesn't exist in this budget.
And that's exactly what we're proposing at town meeting this year is for the capital plan is what you're talking about.
We still have a budget for it.
We are doing it for the highway department and the police department right now for the replacement of motorized highway equipment. For highway and fire this year. Next year, we will put a capital plan in place. However, we have $50,000 in reserves right now, which is sufficient for replacement in the case we do need a replacement anytime soon. Next year, we would have to do the same thing we're doing this year at town meeting and ask the town, first the select board to adopt the capital plan for the police vehicle replacement. And then we would put it on a special article for the town to vote on. Similar to like I said, for the highway equipment and then also on the fire equipment.
Brent? If it's a regional department and you put a capital plan in place, how does that work with the 3 towns or, potentially more towns? How does that work as far as that, like approval process for a capital plan? I know you sort of went over a little bit, but.
Of course. So the capital plan would be reviewed with the 3 town committee, which is the recommended structure that we have for the same structure we have for the transfer station. And if you remember, we did that deficit reduction line item for the transfer stations. We also did the compactor replacement line item for the transfer station. So what happens is, and we have a capital plan, by the way, already established for police vehicles. We just didn't put it on the town meeting warning this year. And it will be on there next year. It calls for $25,000. And the benefit is that if you put $25,000 into the budget, it gets split. Just, you know, let's say it's $533,000 next year, we add the 25,000 to it. So now that's split between 3 towns instead of putting a burden on just one town. Yeah.
Amy Bestmain is wondering about the vehicles lettering. Because they were re-lettered for the Windsor County Sheriff's Department and what will happen next.
Yeah, so that lettering would be removed, and it would be replaced with, if the town attorney responds and says we can DBA this department, we would letter it the Montesquieu Regional Police Department. If not, we would letter it the Weathersfield Police Department.
Arcade, did you unmute? Did you have a question?
Yeah, I got a lady over here who had her hand up for a while. Can't remember what her name is.
That's okay.
Sophia.
Let's say that crazy long name. I'm Sophia Lashikayla and from Weathersfield. I'm gonna try and talk fast because I have a whole bunch of questions. So how does mutual aid work when there are almost no resources that we're sharing in these 3 towns? I'm thinking that if we ask Springfield for mutual aid, maybe we should be increasing that to Ludlow, Chester, Windsor, because it probably will work very similarly to the fire mutual aids that happen right now. If there's an emergency, there's an emergency, just like the person who had 7 police officers on her property when somebody was being chased. So I'm a little concerned about our one person, because I would assume it would be 1.5 people on at a time, depending on when peaks are. When we were in conversation previously, I was at that meeting that you voted on. One of our big concerns and one of the things that was really hurting our town was that BSP at night was taking up to 2 hours to get to us because they have 3 people on for the entire state. So I'm still very concerned about how we deal with that. Do we add more people at night than the day, because that's when all the drug activity is? Emergency response when issues are occurring, I already talked about that. As we know, drugs have been cleaned up, and they usually come back to the areas of least resistance. If we don't have enough policing, we're gonna be right back to where we were, and we're gonna be having these and I don't know, we may still have other drugs to clean up, I don't know, but I know that across the state, it seems it's in the news all the time. So I'm kind of hoping we're making progress. So I don't know how many drug busts we've made, but if something happens where it is a drug bust, I would think we really would need more oomph than just Springfield. That's it. I made it.
Good job. First, those were all like very, very good questions, and I appreciate those. So the town of Weathersfield's contracted for 100 hours of service right now with the Windsor County Sheriff's Department. This proposal increases that by 18 hours per week. So what it does is it provides services for 67 an hour instead of 77 an hour. So we're saving $10 an hour there and getting 18 more hours per week. I'd like to actually ask Josh, can you comment on mutual aid?
It depends on Potter, as far as how PD works. We have, when we have Weathersfield PD and with the sheriff department, we've seen mutual aid work. And I would suspect that would continue because emergency services across the board is overwhelmed. I think that in talk to the town manager, although this plan is not perfect, this is a solid plan moving forward. The fire department has already seen a decrease in availability since the arrest of the sheriff. And for us, stability is super important. We work very closely with the police, and although VSP serves a role, they're not going to be able to take care of our needs in town. So having something that we have some control over and a board that the police will answer to is really a solid plan, and I'm excited to see where this will go. But I share in a lot of the concerns that you all have, and I've read a bunch of comments online, not all of them. And they're all valid concerns. We have seen an outstanding presence from the sheriff's department. I think that the town manager and the board, their overarching goal is to continue to have great service in town.
Thank you. That answer all your questions?
Yeah, I
Just wanna
mean,
make sure
I
everything.
they're mostly, I also think, I'm just gonna say it's for you to, for all of you to consider, because I don't think it can be answered in a second anyway.
Thank you so
What do
much.
you got?
Can we put this gentleman down here?
I can't-
He's had his hand up a lot.
Okay, sorry, I can't see you down there.
I'm Dave from Avenue Select.
Okay,
My question is kind of on the same lines. You have us down allocated for 20 hours for whatever the $67,000 is budgeted for. My question is, if there's not an officer in that town, say during the night when there's a break into somebody's house or a major structure fire, is somebody from this department going to respond?
Yeah, so we would have on-call coverage. So basically what happens is the police officers take their cruisers home. And then when there's a call, they go home and, and then they get paid for that. So, yes, the answer is yes.
I think we got someone online. Do you have someone?
Amy Bestman had a question about the cost for the relettering of the cars.
Amy Bethlean has addressed the board already.
Yeah, so we're gonna go to Jessica here.
All right, well, I have a few things and I'll address that question because that's one of mine. So there's no cost in the budget about rebranding. You're gonna have to take off all the letters of the police cruisers and do all new lettering. So that's question number one, sort of piggybacking on everybody about coverage. Experience knowing VSP saying, I'm not coming, we're not coming, we don't have the resources, we're not coming. So we go back to 2 full-time, 2 part-time, and a chief. That's not 24/7 coverage for the town of Weathersfield, or Reading, or Cavendish. So when we call VSP, not coming. When Springfield's doing a drug bust on Valley Street, they're not coming. Right? So we can't sit here and say we're gonna have coverage, because I've heard it way too many times, VSP denied coming to our town for coverage. And now we don't have police coverage for Cavendish and Reading, so who's gonna come to their aid for us, right? So I really don't think the officers, we're not having 24/7, 365 coverage, so we're not having coverage. Let's just be real, people. Secondly, dispatch services, you have pending $25,000. I'm pretty sure when Town of Weathersfield was here and Chief Daniels was a thing, there was a huge big thing about VSP not wanting to dispatch. Hartford not wanting to dispatch, everybody not wanting to dispatch, and or raising the cost of dispatching up tremendously. There's been dispatchers commenting on our posts online asking what's gonna happen with dispatching. So I hope that there's a good concrete plan for dispatching, because that's really important for this town.
So.
Is that it?
That's it, Kelly.
Read your 2 minutes.
I talked fast.
I'm gonna direct one question to Josh. Do we have 24/7 coverage with the sheriff's department right now? No.
We've seen a decline since the sheriff was arrested.
Well, because he's on the fire department. We do not have 24/7 coverage right now.
But didn't we exceed the number of hours that we allocated, so it was way more than we thought?
What was happening is, let's say. Can I be hypothetical?
Sure.
Okay. So let's say an entity has $500,000 in the bank. Let's say that entity has full-time officers. Let's say that entity has $500,000 in contracts. That they receive $500,000 annually from contracts. Now let's say that entity has $1 million in employee expenses. That entity is going to provide a lot of services until that $500,000 in the bank runs out.
My point being is if we all combine into one, you're taking away resources, right? So you're not having the sheriffs covering Cavendish. So are the sheriffs still gonna cover the 3 towns that back out on their contracts?
So the sheriff is covering Cavendish right now. Or is, I don't know the exact, how many hours do you guys? So they have 8 hours. How much does Reading have?
10.
10. So what this does is it increases both of those towns that have more coverage than what they currently have. For less money.
Kelly?
Yeah, go ahead.
I believe when we had the Weathersfield Police Department, we didn't actually have a contract with Windsor County Sheriff's Department. But Windsor County Sheriff's Department is a county sheriff's department, and it patrols Windsor County. It as an entirety. So they're actually still gonna have a presence. Is there still a Windsor County Sheriff here?
Yeah, we contract with each and every town. We have with these towns, we've been contracting with Weathersfield. And there is no such thing as a county budget for patrol throughout the county. That's just not there. There's in the county budget that everybody pays a little bit to. That goes with specific things that goes for, and one of them specifically, the side judges say there's no funding in that for general patrol. So we scramble, and when we have 3 or 4 deputies scrambling to Weathersfield, we're pulling deputies. We're pulling them. We end up sometimes we can charge the town, but sometimes we have to pull that funds out of the out of our administrative leave. That drains the sheriff's department's general budget down. So, but there is no, there's nothing from the county, I guess is what I'm trying to say. We're here because we have a contract with Weathersfield. And I'm very happy to see that the town is considering raising it up to at least 150 hours a week, and even more would be better, because we're scrambling 100 hours. And so I do the schedule. So I set a Weathersfield patrol in the morning for like a 10-hour block, 7 to 5 or whatever. And the next thing you know, at 9 o'clock comes a domestic. So the next thing you know, we got to scramble. We always find somebody to go, and we take care of it. But to really have good force, you're really going to need 150 to 200 at least hours to have the officers now there to take care of it. When you get up to that many, it's possible. I'd be a little nervous that officers way out in Cavendish on the back road, and then there's an accident right by the interstate. Well, if you got contingent plans, maybe you do, then you're okay. Maybe it's just.
I mean, that's what they've always said. I mean, you're in that predicament. DSP is always like, I don't have resources.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. As far as dispatching services go, I have been talking to VSP. I've talked to the town of Hartford, and I'm currently in conversations with the town of Springfield. VSP did state that they didn't want to be in the business anymore. We had 18,000 in there for dispatching services. They're currently working on a mechanism to figure out how to charge towns for dispatching services. We never terminated our dispatching services with the Vermont State Police. So I'm currently working with Christian Pinoti, which is the director of communications for VSP for dispatching services. Also had a conversation with Springfield Hartford as well. So like I said, and the reason this dispatch service number is pending, it could be less. It could be nothing. It could be more. So
it won't be nothing.
It won't be nothing. Let's be real. Come on.
VSP wasn't charging us, and they haven't.
But they wanted to 2 years ago.
And the discussions that I had with Christian, he doesn't have any ability right now to charge for dispatching services. So everybody that's currently using VSP dispatching services are not paying for dispatching services right now. And in the future, there'll be an allocation formula supposedly. But right now, those towns are not being charged. We did not terminate our services with them.
Not on the agenda.
Sorry.
The question is to be answered.
Oh, the branding cost vehicles.
Oh, this was.
So either contingency or reserve funds for the rebranding.
Is everybody else?
Yeah, there's a couple more questions.
Anybody, has it anybody that's new? Are they new?
Stacy Westchester.
Yeah.
Is asking if the on-call coverage is in the budget.
Yes.
Yes,
$3,500. Per OT, right?
that's been,
Point of order.
Yeah.
You're out of order.
so I do want to say that we have highway safety grants and various grants that are available to us that we've always used for OT. Additionally, we have funding coming from the Army Corps of Engineers to provide some flexibility for overtime expenses. So there's grants that go into this too, and that's separate from the budget.
Do you have anybody else, Suzanne?
No one knew.
Go ahead.
Steve Doffin, Weathersfield. As we've said, the three towns are combined 5,000 residents. If we want 24/7 coverage, we all have to be prepared to pay a hell of a lot more money than what we're seeing on this budget. I've been in this town 35 years, and I think it's a delusion if anyone's ever thought we had 24/7 coverage around here. We may be able to get someone to come in, but there's not usually a police officer sitting on the corner at Downey's Four Corners or whatever. If we want more coverage, if we want to feel safer, we all have to feel or accept that our taxes are going to go up. This isn't free. I know that the hourly rate that you have here, and maybe it's an average, probably isn't going to do it. Haven't we had a problem in the past of retaining police officers because they go to a different opportunity, a bigger town? I can be a chief over here. Whatever the case is, we may have to pay more to retain good people. I mean, we got to be realistic. We can't do this on the cheap. If we try to do it on the cheap, it's not going to work. I think they put a lot of effort into coming up with something here. But I think the problem that the town is in is because, we're poor. We don't have a lot of residents. We don't have a lot of commercial tax base, whatever the case may be. But if we want to feel safe in our beds every night, we're going to have to pay more. There's nothing else we can do about it. That's just life.
All right, so back when we had the Weathersfield Police Department, we paid $25 an hour, basically. And what this does is it increases that to $31.76 per hour on average per officer. And that's actually competitive. I looked at VLCT compensation data to pull that number from several hundred towns. In order to pull that hourly rate. It's competitive with Springfield, it's competitive with our surrounding towns. 100,000 per chief starting. Again, based on and backed up by VLCT compensation data. And you're gonna have bigger towns like Claremont and Springfield where they need to get paid a little bit more. But Chief Daniels, when he was here, I believe made $89,000. So we're going up 11,000 on that. I think we can have further discussions about increased policing presence for this year. And I think the three towns, if we decide to do this, we can discuss that at the committee level and get input. Like, do we want to pay more for services and have more public forum and dialogue about that? But the goal this year, since our budgets are already going through town meeting, the goal was to work within everyone's existing budget to make the transition possible. Then again, the three towns all agree that we want to increase policing presence. Then we'll bring that back to the select boards to discuss and go through the whole process. I do agree with you. It was odd to me when I first came here that we didn't have 24/7 policing coverage, because that's what I'm used to where I came from. So I do totally agree with more policing presence.
Yes, there's a shortage of police throughout the country, and certainly in these rural towns like this. What happens if you never get an applicant? What happens? Do we go back to Windsor and say, hey guys, we really need you now, or what?
Oddly enough, since we terminated our contract. And before I even advertised, I have resumes flying into my office from all over the state of Vermont.
Really?
The town of Weathersfield is an excellent place to work. This is a great community. And I am extremely confident we'll have the department fully staffed within the timeline.
Christina, are you so saying that the officers are gonna take their vehicles home at night? So that means you're requiring them to live in one of the 3 towns that we're providing coverage for?
Oh, yeah, they'd have to live within a radius of our towns, absolutely. Chief Daniels did, our police force prior to that did, Sheriff Brian Palmer lived right in Windsor.
Right, but like some of your prior officers lived in Springfield.
Yes.
So how much, I guess what I'm saying is, if they live on the tail end of Springfield, say North Springfield area, and they get a call to fire in Brownsville, not Brownsville,
Ready?
Cavendish, Reading, that takes time for their coverage.
I think we definitely need to put a strategy in place for prompt response time, and we'd have to work out those details a little bit more. And I think that's a strategic question for us to figure out.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Are you on the second round now?
Yeah.
Thank you for acknowledging me. So first I want to start by saying, I'm sorry I didn't say this when I got a chance to speak first, but I want to thank the Windsor County Sheriff's Department for the coverage that they provided since June 1st. Absolutely no complaints on the Windsor County Sheriff's Department. All good news, all more coverage, all more patrol, more drug busts. There are no negative comments from the public that I've seen through the town of Weathersfield, so please pass that along, thank you.
Thank you.
Unfortunate situation before us.
Thank you.
And then I wanted to ask where the administrative cost is in this budget. And I wanted to ask, when the Cavendish, contract goes through with the current sheriff's department.
We're the end of, we're June 30th.
So fiscal year, like most people. And so then, administrative costs.
Administrative costs. So that would be handled collectively through the transfer station. Excuse me. I'm so used to discussing that when we're talking about tri-town day. You'll have a regional police department committee, and then administrative costs would be absorbed within the 3. Rick and I would do the bulk of the, and our staff will do the work. It's not, when we talk about administrative costs for someone, there's really not much other than doing the budget to actuals, which I can pull together in 15 to 20 minutes. It's a lot different than operating an entity like the water district, for example. That's a significant amount of work because we have to do the billing, we have this big main water line replacement project, we're constantly, we're not looking to add into an expense for this. We don't do it for any of them.
I've heard comparison to the police force to the transfer department so many times. There is absolutely no comparison when you're talking police, public safety, and transfer department. And administrative costs, I mean, our town manager has a lot of other stuff to pay attention to in the town of Weathersfield than to run fire department and the police force.
We have a fire chief that runs the fire department.
We're gonna have police.
I'm looking at the police chief and the police force. And also when I compare the transfer station to the police force, I'm not comparing the entities, I'm comparing the allocation formula and also the way that the 3 towns do business through an intermunicipal agreement. It's very similar in process.
Sophia? So my follow-up question to the gentleman from, I apologize for not remembering your name, from the sheriff's department, as well as some of the other discussions that we've had. So one of the items that he brought up is that many times the call volume exceeds what they were allocating to us. And so when this now happens in the new model, I assume the person is obviously gonna be on potentially. And then we'll take an on-call person off and get additional people to deal with the additional calls. So I would think that we should at least, and I know you have a contingency budget.
Yep.
But there is the big possibility that we could go significantly over that based on the number of calls that actually occur and when.
And I'd hate to continue comparing this to the transfer station. Lisa, I'm sorry. But so what we have built into the transfer station budget, because we do this 3-town agreement. And that's why, again, totally separate functions, very similar process. We have a line in the transfer station budget. It's called the deficit reduction line. And basically, if we go over in the budget, like let's say in FY26, and FY27, whatever that overage is, you put it in the next year's budget, and then you distribute it based on the allocation.
But I think that that's to her point, it's not being realistic, because the transfer station mostly is a static amount of items where call volumes and emergencies, I mean, again, we know car accidents and emergencies, sometimes it's the trifecta and every part of it, you know, you can't get across town, there's an accident in every direction. So I'm just trying to put out there, I get, we need to be, the budget is the budget, but I think we need to be careful and at least potentially see if we can extract any additional information from the sheriff's department of when they had their, you know, when we had multiple things happening, what were the greatest time periods?
Absolutely. And I am currently working with the sheriff's department and several deputies on this plan. I'll have to, just because I disagree a little bit with the variable part, because what we have in the transfer station is we have variable revenues and variable expenses, which would be similar to, so like with the punch tickets, you don't know how much trash you're gonna collect, right? You're not gonna know how much trash is being transferred out. So on the expense side, you could overspend and not have your punch ticket keeping up with the amount of revenue. We deal with this every year. So what we do is if it ends in a surplus, like let's say we don't spend this much, well then it rolls into the next year's budget and the allocations go down.
Second, we've got Nathan here first, go ahead, Nathan.
Well, my only thought is right, if you're looking at increasing the debt coverage means more officers, which means either more money or expanding the region, right? So the other option, which comes with its own problems, right, if you have a too big a region, you have your own problem. But it seems like one option could be talking to some of these other towns in the region that are in similar situations.
Yeah, and there certainly have been others that have reached out to us.
Josh down here, had his hand up, then we'll go on long.
I'm hearing a lot of really good concerns, and if I kind of remove myself, I very much understand the concerns around uncertainty when we've had the best policing that we've had probably that any of us can ever remember in this town. In 20 years. And I think that that's very fair. I also think that we're diving into the weeds a little bit on some things that the future police chief and town manager need to be working together. Honestly, none of us in this room from Weathersfield, I don't want to take away from Claude or the other two deputies here. They can answer law enforcement questions. We're not, none of us are in that position, and Brandon's trying, but it's not his specialty. I think there would be tremendous value if we go forward in bringing our concerns as a town to that police chief and Brandon, so that they can create a police force over the next 18 months, because I agree about the budget concerns too, but we're stuck with the budget. So create that over the next 18 months so that we do have the police force we want, because we are in a unique opportunity to build it.
Thanks, Josh.
And then your 2 minutes.
Stacy B asked, what certification level do you plan on hiring for the officers?
Level 2, level 3.
That it?
There were people that had asked before, do they get another check?
Yeah.
Nicole Gannon asked, how do we make sure no town ends up paying more than their fair share?
Oh, so that's been the fixed allocation formula in full. So the reason and Bob and I dealt with this back in 2020, 2021, 2022. There wasn't a fair allocation formula for the transfer station. There is now, and it's working very well. The same allocation formula would be used for the police department. And again, I hate to keep comparing this to the transfer station, but it's very different functions, very similar way of allocating costs.
Melissa Davis had a question on how much a fully equipped police cruiser would cost.
I can do some research on that. I could throw a number out there, but I don't want to.
Yeah, Mr. Bates over here.
Yeah, I'm just wondering. My understanding is that when someone is stopped for speeding and gets a fine and pays the fine, a percentage of that returns to the municipality.
Yeah.
It seems like that's a revenue in that doesn't appear in this budget, and I'm wondering if that's a significant amount.
It's 1, 2, 3, 4 lines down in revenue.
Oh, never mind.
Mike?
We don't know right now where the $16,000 contingency is gonna end up. Potentially, I guess if everything in here lined up exactly the way it is. And dispatch came in, let's say at 20,000, then we have 2,100 in contingency that's floating there. I also think that I agree, the Windsor County Sheriff's Department did an amazing job.
Yes.
And part of that was Sheriff Palmer responding during off-duty hours. And not really off duty, he was on duty all the time. And he wasn't charging us for a lot of that time. We may need to think about this first year going in, that there's going to be an overtime expense. Greater than what we've allowed for in the contingency.
Yep.
The 16,000, if just the 16,000 ended up being there, that would equate to 340 overtime hours at full-time wage. Part-time and a half. And it might go beyond that even. We might end up in a deficit expense.
Yeah.
But the goal, I think, from this board, and I'll say this if anybody on our board disagrees with me, is to attempt to replace what the sheriff's department was doing. Because we know that everybody wants that. So we're paying very close attention to that.
And I wanna thank Josh for you bringing up the 18 month plan, because that really helps me understand where we are, what we're trying to do right now, what we're trying to do longer term to get to where we need to be. So on day one, we're not gonna be where we want to be. We're gonna need to get to where we want to be.
Absolutely.
I don't know what your name is.
Tom Lynch.
Know the face, just didn't know the name.
I have just under 30 years experience in law enforcement, and what made the sheriff's department so successful with the people in Weathersfield is they came in and they used modern community policing techniques. They weren't sitting with their radio on waiting for a call. They were out there looking for issues, talking to the public, finding out what areas and so on. So it's important that when we make the selection of not just the chief, but also the officers, that this be very clear to them that it's not a fixed schedule, and that there may be overnight problems depending if there is something that's going on. And we also need, you got a taste of it, and it sounds like you're all in favor of it, but the community itself has to communicate with the sheriff. I was astonished when we had the meeting before the sheriff's contract, and a lot of citizens showed up with very disturbing stories of our previous police administration. We cannot allow that to happen again. We cannot allow complacency to fall back in.
Agreed.
You've gotta pick the right person for the job and have expectations on both sides of that conversation. And that's where the selection process is really gonna be important, and you'll see that 24-hour concern that some of you had, we've never had 24-hour coverage. But 40% of police work is perception. Thank God for television, that makes it probably almost 60%, but you know, so as long as you keep those communication lines open with your expectations as well as the officers that are hired, we can really make this work and get that type of quality policing that you're looking for. And we have to do it, gentlemen over here said it, we really need to be vested that it's not just a necessary evil that we're doing here. It is a need that the community wants and needs. And it will work out.
Can I respond one day?
A second, that's just 2 minutes. Yeah.
We would have a. We would have an interview panel, and I would be looking for people that either currently work in law enforcement or have worked in law enforcement in the past to be on that interview panel. So if you have any interest in being on that interview panel, please reach out. Sure. Thanks.
I just to follow up on what he just said, that's what I was just gonna say, move into was the other boards, Cavendish and Reading. What would their desires be for the assembly of that committee and participation in that committee? And thinking about that so that, you know, if we're gonna come back together on this, knowing what the direction might be then.
So in Cavendish, this will be on our agenda come first meeting in March for us to discuss it in a public meeting, which we haven't done yet. And then going forward, so if the Cavendish board decides that, you know, we want to be part of this, obviously we tell you as fast as we possibly could so we can be part of that selection process. So if it doesn't work out that way, you know, we know you're in a different spot where you have to move on right now and move but we'll know more on March 9th from where we.
Tim Sargent asked, could you provide the actual hours of coverage each week over the past couple of months prior to the recent reduced coverage that the Windsor County Sheriff's Department has needed to cover all of the calls for comparison to the projected 150 hours? If it exceeds the 150 hours included in the proposal, could you provide a new proposal to show the difference in budget to get the same level of coverage moving forward?
If you could copy and like paste that into a Word document and let them know, I'll get back to them with that. You know, I have his email address, and it won't be this week, it'll be next week.
Tim, did you hear that?
Good question.
Very good. And will that number include all of Sheriff Palmer's 0 responses, 0 cost responses? When he would come out and not charge us? We don't know that. I guess I'm asking you if the numbers that we get for calls when Sheriff Palmer responded without charging us, were those at least the number and the fact that he responded counted in the number of calls?
I would say the majority of the time, not all of them, but the majority of the time, Sheriff Palmer would scramble to assist another deputy in town that he thought that deputy might need help.
Okay.
So that's when you saw Sheriff Palmer usually scramble. Now, every once in a while, he'll come out in the middle of the night. Right now, we have a supervisor on call, and we have deputies on call to come out in the middle of the night. We've taken several middle of the night calls for the last 2-3 weeks. In the middle of the night, so we have a deputy that's ready to come out at 3 o'clock in the morning. So, but you know, yeah, he come out a lot, checking on his deputies, which was nice when we did that. He scrambled out to make sure they were all right, the domestic or whatever was going on. Yeah.
To piggyback back off of what that gentleman was saying, it used to be kind of a joke when I was younger. It was like, well, if you're gonna rob the gas station, do it at 10 o'clock because the police chief was over at the dam. You could kind of tell, you could see Lucy, so. I like the idea of having local oversight in the problem.
You're giving it all away.
Don't come brother. But, if we're starting over fresh, maybe there needs to be conversation about what kind of police force we have, how it operates, what kind of policing we're doing and things like that, instead of taking this as something that's, yeah, it's an unfortunate situation, but maybe actually it's an opportunity to get off on the right foot and to give everybody a chance to make this work. Because if we're all just negative Nancy and this isn't gonna work, it's doomed from the start. So, let's pull together and come up with something that works.
Absolutely. And we have seen a working model. Most recently that we want to mimic or try to achieve.
I'll be honest, I come down Route 5 and I'm slowing down because I'm paranoid I'm gonna get pulled up. I used to blow past bogus, but I didn't, not anymore.
Perkinsville, they're sitting at the school all the time.
Yeah.
They're the whole way.
Go over and drive through Plainfield. I mean, you figure it out after a while. You better slow down or you're gonna get a ticket. So that's your perception right there.
And that presence is what is, I think everybody's been trying to say is important in this town. Right. And it's what we're looking for.
We got the highway, we got main routes. There's just people passing through town left and right, so.
So last April, I was actually one of the ones that got a lot of the concerns forward, and I feel like they were, concerns that you guys hadn't heard. I feel like at that time, you kind of had your heart set on going with Windsor for our backup, like at that time. Listening to my concerns, I think that you all obviously shifted your gears and totally validated my concerns and I'm grateful that you changed gears and we now have become accustomed. Fast forward to 2 weeks ago, hearing the Facebook comments, I was very nervous because guess what? I live right at Downers and that's where the majority of our problems are in our town. I've had SWAT team climbing my fence for those of you who don't know. Going after drug houses. I could go on and on and on with this level of concern that I brought to you guys, but I want to keep it short tonight. And so a couple weeks ago when it was brought to my attention, I've been very happy with the Windsor County Sheriff. I could not be happier. I am super happy with the coverage we have. I've been grateful every day. I can walk down my driveway. I can walk to the store. I actually feel safe for a first time in many, many years. With that being said, reading the comments a couple weeks ago, I became very nervous and obviously have come to these meetings and whatever. Brandon, I think that you and the select board have made it abundantly clear that we are not going back to where Bill Daniels left us. We are not going back to that. We had 2 full-time police officers in town that worked 7 to 3, and I'm telling you, living next to a drug house, those people that they were looking for all day from the fire station, they knew, they were looking for a black Jeep. And they knew that our officers were off at X amount of time at every single day. It was Monday through Friday coverage, 7 to whatever. And they would pull up in the driveway at that time. Every day. I knew every Friday night when I came home there was gonna be a drug shipment, because I come home at 8:30, 9 o'clock. I knew that the drug shipment was gonna come. But we didn't have coverage at that time. So Anyway, to my point, I just wanna like keep this short and simple. I'm very grateful for your speech that you did on Monday night. That like put me back at ease, and I feel like you guys completely understand what we've come to expect. And I think this 150 hours is, you understand that we need 150 hours, maybe more. We'll get there, versus 100 hours even that you're getting from the sheriffs. Thank you.
That's it, motion.
Anything else?
I can't discuss anything else. One more, here we go.
I just wanted to mention. I understand we're done. Either June first, July first. Depending on how well everything moves along with the new chief and stuff. But I just want to throw it out there and mention. That if you find yourselves in a spot. And need a little bit extra coverage. Maybe an 8-hour shift every day from certain time to certain time to help with the new transition. Please call. You know we're not the big contract here anymore here pretty soon. But we're kind of in the business of the contracts. That's how we survive. Unfortunately, sheriff's departments have to run like a business. And so we'd be glad to figure out a way to help. You know, it could be at certain evenings, it could be maybe it's not working out to have an officer in town Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday night from 3 to 11 or whatever the town wants. Those are the type of things, so you know, that we're willing to do our very best to help.
Thank you.
If there would be any help for you now.
Thank you. And we'll definitely be in discussion about potential additional services. I plan on reaching out to you in a couple of days, probably early next week after town meeting. So we'll discuss it then.
Okay, no further discussion. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? All right. Thank you. Thank you, guys.